2024 was a special year for the Sun Devils. And for the special teams, well, it's more of a mixed bag. But some key offseason additions should give assistant head coach and special teams coordinator Charlie Ragle a chance to field a formidable group in the title defense campaign. On this episode, Charlie and I discuss the outlook for the special teams units, the evolution of the program's culture, the local recruiting strategy for the Sun Devils, and so much more. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Charlie Ragle. All right, Coach, got to start off with a very important question. This year, OCs and DCs are in the video game. Why are there no special teams coordinators in the new EA Sports game?
Oh, man. Where's the love, right? That is the, world's, no one wants to be a special teams coordinator. You know what I mean? Like, hey, when you do good, everybody expects that's just the way it is. And when you don't, everyone's on your head. So, that's the world we live in. But, hey, it's all good.
So, of course, obviously, that's kind of a big popular topic these days. And I was talking to Brian Ward recently. He said that it actually kind of pops up here and there in terms of like on recruits' radar and is a factor. Where are you seeing this as kind of is something that the next wave, the next generation of recruits is like really like kind of factoring things in a little bit on the video game front?
Well, I think the one thing, though, I get it, if you're a position player per se, like, offense, defense, but I think in the world of specialists, it's such a unique world, right? Unless that's your niche, right? Or you're just a big fan of football and you follow special teams, which it's a very small percentage of people that do. The special teams world and the specialists in particular are usually at the back of the line, so to speak. So I don't know that that's something that really, pushes the needle forward with them. I think, at the end for them, it's about, how good can they be? How good can you get them? And I don't know that that's a factor just yet.
So you're getting back to, Sun Devil stuff that, really is applicable as we move forward. You've been here since day one with Kenny. You were part of, the group that really helped establish the culture and the foundation here. And obviously you guys are been very vocal that, it's a player-led, coach-fed culture within that building. Now that you're heading into year 3, this, of course, coming off a Big 12 championship, how have you seen the culture evolve, since, kind of day one a couple of years ago to right now as the reigning champs?
I obviously I think it's night and day, and I know we've talked about this. When you get in and you take over a program, you're kind of just trying to make heads and tails of where you're at within the program. You're trying to get to know the kids that are in your program and develop relationships with them. At the same time, you're trying to recruit more kids to the program. On top of all that, you're trying to take the program in the direction you believe is best suited for your vision, your philosophy, your culture. That's a huge undertaking, at the very beginning. And so, to go from year 1 now to year 3, obviously having the success we did in year 2, and keeping the majority of players on the roster that are, in the 2 deep, they really understand what is what the expectations are, what's being asked of them. And again, when you have that ability, the continuity, it really does take care. A lot of the stuff just takes care of itself.
How do you feel this team has handled success, especially since so many of this year's team were part of last year's group as well?
Yeah, I think it's to be determined, right? I mean, nobody's going to really know the answer to that question until the season finishes sometime, the regular season sometime in December. Every season, and especially as college football morphs its way into more of an NFL type of a model, so to speak, each season is brand new. I think that's something that early on in my career I watched, and like a lot of us did, in terms of watching the brilliant run that Coach Saban had at Alabama. And I don't know, something that he said has always stuck with me. And it's really, was talking about how to, after they win a national championship, what does that next day look like? That first day for the next, his next team. And, he said it starts over. These guys didn't win a national championship. The team last year won a national championship. And yeah, some of you guys might have been on that team, but this team hasn't done anything. And so what this team has to do is, all of the off-season winter workouts, spring ball, the summer workouts, all of those things culminate in a season that lies ahead, fall camp, which we're about to get into, right? So that resonated with me. Yeah, these guys, and there's a lot of them that were on last year's team, and they know what it takes. They know what it feels like, what it smells like, what it tastes like. But this is a different team with different leaders, and there's guys on this team that weren't on last year's team that will have an impact on the outcome of this fall's game. So how we've handled success, to me, is to be determined.
So, of course, being here since day one with Kenny, yeah, you've known him obviously for quite some time, dating well back. How have you seen him kind of evolve now? He's still, one of the youngest head coaches in the entire country, but now that, after the difficulties that you guys experienced in year one, the big success in year two, how have you seen him continue his evolution as a head coach?
Well, I think I don't care how old you are. If you're going to be successful in any walk of life, growth is forever, right? It's never final. And the day that you think, oh man, I've got it all figured out, is the day that your career in any profession, any walk of life begins to die, right? So we're all evolving and trying to get better. I mean, this is my 26th year in coaching football. I'm no different in that space, right? I've seen him grow immensely in all kinds of roles. Not enough time on the show to talk about all of them, but I think in his leadership, and in his decision making, how he deals with coaches, how he deals with players, how he deals with the media, donors, etc. I think he's continued to grow and mature, and I really feel as we go into year three, he's really settling into the role and probably in his best position to lead this team this year.
So I like asking this question of all the coaches, and you might be best equipped amongst all of them to answer this, but having known him for so long, he's obviously a very quotable guy. What's your favorite Dillyism?
Oh man, when they say "What's up?" How you doing? Life, life. So, I'll tell you what. There's not a day that he doesn't come in there and how's it going? Life. He's always got that vim and vigor, man, and it's infectious. And I've kind of been one of those people myself. That's probably why we gravitated towards each other at a young age. He's got a zest for life and a passion for the game, and those are two things that if you have, it certainly makes you special.
That's kind of that has been like the answer that's been far and away like the most common. So life. On the same token, amongst your players, what would your players maybe say is a Regalism?
Man, that's a great question. Ooh, some of those might not be quotable, especially last season at certain times. Oh man, that's a great question. I don't know. You're gonna have to ask them.
Okay,
you gotta let me know.
Okay. Well, practice starts up soon, so the research will commence.
I am looking forward to that.
So obviously, football is never really stagnant. There's always new trends, new philosophies, evolution of the game. What sort of things, going on in broad trends in the sports are going on right now that really are most interesting to you?
That's a great question. Man, I think just there's a lot. I mean, obviously, right? A lot of this stuff is happening in real time, and I don't think that's probably something that's happened in the history of the game. So many real time changes with lawsuits and filings, injunctions. The president signing the executive order about third parties not being able to pay college athletes anymore. Like that just happened a few days ago, right? Like what? I mean, I think that's probably, to me, like, let's set the X's and O's aside right now. I think just the fundamental pieces of college football, rosters changing in terms of size, 105 scholarships, all of those things. I don't know if they're fascinating to me as much as they are chaotic at times, but you have to have your head on a swivel and stay, grounded and balanced to keep up with everything that's going on. Because if you don't, you blink your eyes and something has changed in 24 hours. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me right now in the landscape of college football.
So going back a little bit to last year, obviously the difficulties of year one, pretty well documented. But where do you think like some of the key lessons that came from that difficult 2023 season, emerged and ultimately were most impactful in helping this team to the heights and success that it had last year?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was after the season was over. I mean, we all know you got to have talent. You got to have talented players to win football games. Like that's it. I mean, I think that goes without saying. But I think the biggest thing is that we needed to make sure that we had the right guys that fit what we believed in and how we wanted to go about achieving it. And I think we hit on some guys from a talent standpoint that people had probably, X'd off their list as guys that could do it at this high a level. But we certainly hit on some of those guys. But I think what we did a really, really good job of was a mix between that and finding a lot of guys that really loved football and were good people. And I think the combination of those two plus, hitting on some of those guys being pretty talented as well was a big piece of why we did what we did last season.
So you kind of maybe alluded to it a little bit ago. Special teams had a kind of some up and downs
Yeah.
throughout the course of last season. Now that when you look back and kind of evaluate and took that 2024 season as a whole, what's your overall evaluation of the Sun Devil special teams in 24?
Well, I think, and I don't want to get too long-winded here. It's like I said, I think that had we not had the kicking snafu that we did, then it's probably, special teams is probably not looked at necessarily in the light that it was after the season was over. I think that was obviously a big deal. We had certainly some highs and we certainly had a couple of lows. Obviously giving up the punt return in the Peach Bowl, that was extremely difficult. And that's something that hasn't happened. To be honest with you, that's the first time in my career of whatever it is, 15, 16 years of Division I special teams coaching that I've had that happen to me. That was a tough pill to swallow. We started a freshman punter and he certainly did well at times. Had some snafus along the way, as you would expect from any true freshman player. Our return game was not great. We did do some things. Obviously, everyone wants to chronicle the issues of Hershey, but he did go 3 for 3 in the Mississippi State game, and we won that game by a score. Should have won it by more, as we all are aware, but it is what it is. And then we were able to block the punt against Central Florida and scoop and score that 4 touchdown, a game decided by 1 score. So there was some highs too, for sure. But I think, like I said, I think the kicking, snafu really kind of put a sour taste in the fans' mouth, and then it's understandable. And like I said, when you do well in special teams, it's really just flies under the radar. You're kind of like a long snapper as the coach. If people don't know your name, you're probably doing a pretty good job. But when they know your name, it means probably you've had some problems. And so. Certainly an up and down year and something we expect to eradicate this season, and looking forward to doing that here this fall.
Yeah, we'll certainly dive into what's ahead. But looking back real quick, just overall, what were some of your favorite moments of that magical run? And the guys winning a title, making the playoff, and really kind of overall activating the Valley along the way.
Yeah, I think when you're in the forest, right? Like obviously we just talked about some highs and some lows, and like it's like I tell people this all the time. I can tell you, in my head coaching career at Chaparral, 7 losses in 5 years. We were 1-10, taking over an abysmal program at Idaho State, and I can recount all 10 of those losses. I think that's probably the nature of a coach. Like when things go good, you expect them to go good. When they don't go good, those eat at your soul, and it makes it tough. And yeah, the team success was tremendous. And I'm going to give you a couple of things that were really awesome, but it was hard. That was a hard season for me because, there was things that I wanted to fix and couldn't. We just didn't have the personnel per se, and so that was tough. Thankfully we had enough pieces in the puzzle to keep the thing rolling, and mainly a kid named Cameron Scadaboo, who seems to be doing pretty well in New York this far. But I think winning the Big 12 in year one when nobody gave us a chance whatsoever, and watching the team come together like it did. I mean, getting on the bus like after an away game and riding to the airport, or getting off the plane and coming back to what is it, Mountain America Stadium now. Just it was tangible. I ride on the defensive bus, and just listening to those guys form a brotherhood and a bond. That's why we won. Make no mistake about it. Those kids loved each other, and they cared about each other, and they believed in one another. And when it came time to play, they played for each other. And of all the championship teams that I've been on, and I've been on a handful at every level other than the NFL, those guys, those are the teams that win. And I think, the Big 12 championship was a special day, and that will be something that I always remember and cherish. And going to the Peach Bowl, a legendary bowl, as I grew up as a kid, was almost surreal. And it's like I said, you're so deep into the forest at that point you can't see the trees. But as you get out of it, and the season moves on, and you move into the next one and the next one and the next one, that will be a season that I look back and cherish for the rest of my life, because it was certainly special.
How do you feel you grew and evolved as a coach throughout the course and the experiences of last year?
Well, I think what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, right? And it's not like I haven't gone through some low points and had things happen. COVID was absolutely a miserable season. If you were a special teams coach, for things that I don't even have to get into, but it's one of those that you have to figure out a way to get better. No one cares, Brad, right? Like at the end of the day, people just, fans, they want results. We're in a result oriented business that gets showed on TV to the nation every Saturday or Thursday or Friday sometimes. So no one cares about my feelings, and I'm okay with that. I've got enough friends that last me a lifetime. I have a tremendous family. I'm very blessed. But I care about being great, and you have to figure it out and come up with answers. And we went back to the drawing boards on certain things. We retooled the special teams room to a degree, and that really pushed me to want to come out this year and really put a mark for Sun Devil football with the special teams units.
All right. So Kenny recently made a comment saying that kind of recruiting is dead and that retention is really what it's all about. And you guys obviously had tremendous success in keeping the core of last year's squad together heading into this 2025 season. Obviously, recruiting is still very important, but retention in the modern landscape of college football is absolutely crucial. How is this staff able to be so successful in keeping so many guys back and keeping the band back together to run it back for another season?
I think it's just who we are, the authenticity of who we are. You got a bunch of guys in that office that care about people. There's just a bunch of good guys in the football office. I say Sun Devil Stadium all the time, so I apologize to Mountain America, but that's the elder statesman in me, I guess. But there's just a lot of good people in that office, and take football out of it. There are people that, if you're you got a flat on the freeway, that they'd be in a car driving to go help you out. And I think that, as they say, real recognizes real. The players, they recognize that, and they know that we have their best interests. Yeah, we need to win for obvious reasons, right? But those guys understand and appreciate when they come across real ones. And I think there's a bunch of them, like I said, in that office, and you can't fake that. And when players feel that, see that, touch that, they want to be a part of that. And I think that's why the results speak for what they do. And it obviously starts with the head coach.
Or you're one of the many staffers on this in that building that have deep ties to the local high school football community, and of course, the local relationships. in local recruiting. It's still very important. How do you feel, now you guys are heading into the third season, that those relationships with the local high school coaches, overall high school football community are progressing, especially coming off, a very successful season?
I think it continues to trend the right way for us. One season does not make a lifetime. One season does not make a program. One season does not change, the image of your program per se. It certainly helps, but it doesn't give it a full facelift just yet. We've got to come back here and continue to put winning seasons at a high level for ASU football. And as we do that, the relationships have been established. I think there's a lot of people out there trying to help us in the high school realm of things in terms of helping us sign Arizona high school football players. But as I tell people this all the time, and it may be an unpopular opinion, but it's mine. And I think I'm right about it. I'm pretty sure I am, that, recruiting develops and starts when these kids are probably, unless their parents are specifically into sports, right? It might start earlier, but kids start paying attention, like, junior high, about details, 10, 11, 12 years old. They really start, formulating teams and details. And as they really get into junior high, if that's the realm the kid's going to go down, that becomes a popular deal for those kids. And I think, by the time they get to, the end of junior high, 9th, 10th grade, and start playing football, they have an idea of the programs that they like and follow for sure. And then they are good enough, or if they are good enough, they start getting recruited. And, all of a sudden they make their decision, at the beginning, latter part of their juniors, usually typically somewhere in that time frame. That buildup has been happening for 4 or 5 years. It didn't just happen over their sophomore and junior year. That might have been the icing on the cake, but this thing has been growing and developing. And so I say all that to say, like, this thing takes time. This isn't something that just, like I said, happens overnight, and one season's not going to get us every kid in the state of Arizona that we want. Those kids that we're recruiting now have gone through the tail end of Herm, the COVID stuff, the probation stuff. We are just getting our way out of that with the young kids. And I think the more we can win, for obvious reasons, is going to give us a better chance to continue to recruit the state at a high level. And if we can continue to do that, which I believe we can, I think the results are only going to continue to get better over these next 2 to 3 years.
Of course, one of the more creative avenues that the program has taken is with those 27s, with the golden ticket strategy. What was kind of the thought process of, kind of making, that when that kind of opened up and you're for the 27s, of kind of making that like exclusive club and kind of invite only feel for, those priority guys?
Well, we've beat our heads, and I say we, Kenny and myself and Jason and Brian and Coop and Sean, a lot of the Arizona guys. What's the best way to attack the state of Arizona? And we sat down and had a meeting, and that's where Kenny had talked about the idea of the golden ticket. And we're in a realm where, which is crazy to say this, like, people come into the state of Arizona, and not just in Arizona, it happens everywhere, but obviously we're here in Arizona, and they just throw out offers. And if the kid ends up being good, then they come back and they dig in. If he's not, that offer dissipates like sand in the wind. And so, unfortunately, you can't do that in your home state. So we thought, like, what's the best way that we could sit here and attack our state and do the best evaluations that we could? Not always going to be agreed with high school coaches. We understand that. We were on the other side of this ourselves. But that when we put an offer down, that thing was real. And if you wanted to commit tomorrow, come on. And so, hey, we've done our research, the authenticity factor, it's as real as it gets. And because there's a lot of kids in this state that have a bunch of offers that I promise you those aren't real. And that's just the way that the game goes right now. So we thought that this was a way for us to make a mark, kind of make a splash, but also let those kids know that, hey, we really think highly of you, and this is as real as it gets. And that's not to say that kids in this 27 class aren't going to continue to get offers from us as they grow and develop. But at this particular point in their career, we felt most strongly about those young men that we offered the golden ticket to.
So looking, ahead to this group of 2025 guys, coming off of spring ball, what were some of the overall special teams objectives you wanted, and how you feel your guys and your group collectively attack them?
Yeah, I think one, in bringing in Jesus, that was something that we wanted to do, and we felt really good with how he attacked the spring, and just the type of player that he is. Now, again, he's got to go out and perform under pressure, but he's a career 80% field goal kicker. He's kicked in some of the coldest weather in the country. Has a big leg, and so getting him in here was big, and going through the spring with him was a big deal. Wanted to see some significant strides out of Canyon over, the spring and into the summer, which he's really taken a step forward, especially in the summertime. And again, all this stuff is, contingent on these guys got to go out and do it. We did sign Maddie McKenzie, an Australian punter that just got here about a week ago, to make that room even more competitive. We signed another long snapper in Cade Davis, who was the starting snapper at Marshall last year. Tyler Wigglesworth came in and snapped for us in the Peach Bowl and did an outstanding job. But now you've created a room again there with two deep and ultimate competition. Both those guys have been stellar this summer. So I think obviously bringing back Karsten, who finished strong for us down the stretch there in the Big 12 in the Peach Bowl. This is the deepest we've been, and maybe the most talented across the board. And I really do feel good about our special teams return game. I think we've got some explosive guys that can really help us in both units.
All right, so as we close down here, I want to get your quick thoughts on the guys in the room, and maybe your expectations for them in fall camp and the season beyond. You mentioned Jesus, and and watching spring practices, the ball just has a little bit different sound, at least off his foot. I mean, he was obviously hitting from the high 50s out there. What do you think that he can bring to this room in terms of just a weapon, and perhaps even impacting some of maybe the decision makings, in terms of some scoring range that this offense can strike from now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, what he brings is a veteran kicker. He brings a veteran presence to the room, right? Older gentleman in terms of 22. I think he's 22 or 23 years old. He's going into his fifth year of college. How he approaches the game, I think, is very beneficial for the rest of our guys in that group to see. And obviously we expect not only for him to everyone wants to talk about the big balls, right? And everyone hit the 50+ ball. Those are hard to do. I don't care if you're in the NFL. I don't care. Those are hard to do. And can he do that? Yes. And will that certainly impact fourth down decisions by Coach Dillingham? Yes, 100%. But like I tell our guys, like the reality, if you get into the nuts and bolts of defining kicking, like really inside of 40 yards, you got to make 90% of those kicks, period. The money comes, if you want to be a great college kicker, really from about 42 to 48 yards. If you can go 80% or better from there and 90% from inside of 42, and then if you hit 50% of balls over 50, you're going to be an 80% plus field goal kicker. That's going to be a heck of a year for our football team. And the reality is that between extra points and field goals, that's about 25% of the scoring, on average. If he's hitting 80% of those balls that I just mentioned, it's going to be a good day for Sun Devil football.
They mentioned Canyon, as a true freshman, had some good moments. Showed off some nice ability throwing the ball too, as well as kicking it a little bit. But you mentioned some strides that he made there. Where do you see Canyon heading into his second season?
Well, I think it's the old adage, and it sounds cliche, but it's the truth, right? usually players make their most growth from year 1 to year 2. And I would expect that he'd be no different. Again, he's been through it now. He's been on the road, punted in hostile environments. The game will slow down for him some, right? And as you continue to grow and play more games, the more comfortable you feel. I would expect him to have a level of comfort that he didn't have as a true freshman, which is to be expected. And if he performs at the level that he did this summer, I think he's going to be one of the top punters in the league.
All right, and you mentioned, of course, bringing in Matt McKenzie. What's kind of the early scouting report on him? What made you want to make him a Sun Devil, and what kind of fall camp battle perhaps would he present with Canyon?
Well, when we lost Ian and he got in the portal and moved on to Texas Tech, we needed somebody in to add depth to that room. And I've had a great relationships with the guys at Pro Kick, and have spent a ton of time coaching different Australian punters. I thought it was a piece that we could add to our arsenal to the game, and I thought that it would again make the room more competitive. And if Canyon comes in and wins the job, then he's done a hell of a job. And if Maddie comes in and somehow beats out Canyon, then that means that he's done a heck of a job during camp. And that, I promise you, if that happens, then we've got one hell of a punter either way.
And of course, Cade Davis, a veteran long snapper, from Marshall, spent some time at Oklahoma State, I believe, as well. Why did we bring him in, and what does he bring to the competition of pushing Tyler?
Well, he's a unique story. Cade's dad was a Sun Devil, and Cade had gotten into the portal and had reached out, and this was after doing the research, and then watching the film, it was like, man, this kid is extremely talented. And again, I think the best thing about competition for everyone is it elevates the game for all players involved, which only helps your program. And Cade has come in again, another veteran. And I think that's one thing that Brad, we struggled with last year, is that we went from year 1, which we were not a good football team, but we had some pretty good specialists. Dario Longhetta was a good kicker. He didn't convert on a couple kicks, towards the end of the season that he would have put him in the mid 70s from a percentage standpoint. Not fabulous, but not shabby. Slater Zellers is one of the, was a, NFL camp guy, one of the best long snappers there is out there. We had some pretty good specialists, and they were mature veteran 5th year, 6th year guys because of COVID. And it really, when you look to year 2, we were a very, very young group that was very, very immature. And, the lights burned very bright with the amount of success that we had. And I think that was hard for us to deal with. And inevitably that falls on me. I didn't do a good enough job anticipating that these guys, I needed to give them a little bit more leadership. And that's where I really look myself in the mirror and think that I didn't do as good a job as I could have, because they probably needed me more than I anticipated that they did. And I think that when you look across this room now, it's filled with guys, junior, Tyler Wigglesworth is a junior. Cade is a 5th year guy, a 5th year guy, excuse me. Jesus, 5th year guy. Maddie McKenzie's a 21-year-old, so really Karsten Keeper going into his 3rd year. Canyon is the youngest of the bunch, and he's going into his 2nd year, coming off a year of starting. So when you look at that, a retooled group, but a much older and much more mature group that I really think will pay dividends for us down the stretch here this season.
A number of very explosive guys on this roster in terms of when they get the ball in their hands. For the punt and kick return duties, what are you looking ahead, and who are some of the guys you're looking at in fall camp to take those responsibilities?
Yeah, I think when you look at the punt return duties, there's a few guys that we have in mind, right? I think when you talk about it, you got to look at Ralik. We spent some time with him catching punts over the course of the spring and this summer. And if he can continue to progress like he did towards the end of spring and catching the football and continue to work this summer, His explosiveness is elite. If he ends up being the guy back there, I feel very confident to say that we will see a couple of touchdowns returned by him if he gets that opportunity. He's got some. He's the kind, if you're coaching on the other sideline, when you have to punt to him, you don't sleep very well at night. He's got that unique kind of explosiveness and shiftiness that he can go from 0 to 100 real quick. And but there's some other guys, a young buck in Corey Butler has really shown well in the spring. Bringing in Jalen Moss from Fresno was a guy that has a chance, has done it at Fresno, and showed some consistency in catching the ball in the spring. When you start looking at the kick return stuff, those two guys pop right back up. Ralik, was a guy that did it at USC, and again, an explosive hitter that could really give you something. A guy that people haven't heard a whole lot about, Joseph Smith, was a guy that returned several kickoffs for touchdowns in his high school playing days. He's a young man that we will look at. Jaron Hamilton and Jalen Moss as well at the kick return spot. Those are all guys that really we feel very, very confident that when we sort it out and we get to whoever that final man standing, so to speak, is, that guy's going to be an explosive player that we probably haven't had here in 3 years. And that's where, when you look at explosive plays, those are created by explosive players. And, if we're creating some explosive plays on special teams, we're going to be that much more dangerous.
At the end of the day, you mentioned it's a wins-driven business, and getting the wins and bringing home some more hardware is at the top of the goals. But ultimately, for the specialists, specifically, what does success look like in 2025? What does your group need to do in order to ultimately factor in and get those W's?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we have to shore up our kicking situation. I think that, anything in the mid to upper 70s, putting numbers on it, consistency of making field goals. I think that's, anything over 80% is going to be a great year for us, but knowing that if we go out there and we run the kick route, we're going to make those field goals. I think that's something that we have to do on a consistent basis for us, for sure. And then I'd like to see, our punting game, just continue to grow. And that, obviously that's, eliminating any kind of explosive returns, which we had done a pretty good job on in 2 years that we've been here, to be honest, other than the one that everyone remembers stuff in the Peach Bowl. But, if we can continue to do that, I think that will be a good year for us. And then I think the icing on the cake, which I anticipate us in one, what people don't know is we led the country in kick returns that first year on a 3-9 football team. Not the country, excuse me, the Pac-12. We led the Pac-12 in kick returns. We were in the top 20 in the country. But that stuff gets overlooked on a 3-9 team. No one cares. We fell off a little bit last year at the kick return. One of those, whether it's punt return or kick return, needs to be a feather in our cap and give us some explosive plays this season. I think if we can do that and we can create some scoring opportunities on one of those return units, and then do the aforementioned things on the field goal units and the punting units, I think that's a successful year for the Arizona State special teams.
I'd like to thank Charlie for taking the time to talk with me for this episode. Make sure you are subscribed to Speak of the Devils on the podcast platform of your choice for more great episodes all season long. And make sure you're following me on social media at BDenny29.